This is not really much of a photo op, and I apologize for that. Where I wanted to be, it's one of those things like, if you could only see it, you should have been here yesterday. That white statue over there is a reproduction, but it's on a platform that was the temple of Apollo. Now that's not a statue of Apollo, that's a statue of the god of the underworld, Pluto. It doesn't look anything like the Disney version. The little fierce are over here, and there's that three-headed dog that kind of guards the gates to hell. And what they've done is they've cordoned all this off. They're restoring some of it, and they're actually going to charge admission to go in, but until then, nobody can go in there. And there's something there that it really isn't an eyeful to see, but it is interesting. And it's revealing of all things of the book of Revelation. Hierapolis, where we're standing, is not in the book of Revelation. Hierapolis is in the book of Colossians. It's just mentioned in passing. There was a house church here. But it is very close to Laodicea, which is off in that direction, which is going to be our next stop after this, and it's just right over there. This temple of Apollo, as I said, being revealing of it, well, let me start with this. The book of Revelation, your pastors, you've taught this book, haven't you? I mean, John says that who hears the words of this book, they'll be blessed. But I've heard people say, oh, it's too hard to teach. I've heard other people say, oh, we don't know anything about this book, we shouldn't teach it at all. I've even heard one friend say, it shouldn't even be in the Bible. Big mistake. You see, you got to remember who wrote it. John the Apostle was a fisherman from Galilee. John the Apostle was living in Ephesus before he gets deported out to Patmos into a rock quarry where Domitian the emperor puts him because he's a hot potato. Presumably they tried to even martyr him or execute him by boiling him in oil. That's church tradition. And he either survived it or miraculously survived it without a scar, who knows. But we do know that he ended up on Patmos. You have a fisherman from Galilee in the middle of a Hellenized world. This is like Athens East over in this area here, especially a place like Ephesus. And he thinks like a Hebraic Jew. And he writes like a Hebraic Jew. And what that means is that Revelation is just exactly what we call it. It is a revealing. Revelation is not a hiding. Revelation is not a mystery. If God gave us this book, it's because he wants us to understand what he's doing. It's because he wants us to know what's coming. He doesn't want us to second guess it. He doesn't want us to gloss it over. He doesn't want us to say, well, it's irrelevant then or now. He says, this is important. But you still look at it and you say, well, yeah, but there's a lot I don't understand. And when I hear some people teach it, I realize there's a lot they don't understand. The Bible's a simple book, and Revelation was written in such a way that even the Hellenized people who tend to overanalyze things and the simplest Hebraic thinkers could read it and they could understand every single word of it. And this is very important because when you go to teach the Bible and when you go to teach the book of Revelation, every word of it was understandable by the people who received it. The ink is still wet on the scroll. It comes ashore at Ephesus. It's handed off to the elders of the church. They open the scroll, they read it, and they go, wow. Now, what was it pointing to in the future? That remains a bit of a mystery because the future will tell us what was really going on there in certain sense. But when all the imagery that's there, the four horsemen and the angel standing in the sun and all of this stuff, it's things that they could understand. Remember how we said before, in Hebrew thinking, they wouldn't start with the theology and then say, let me illustrate. They'd start with an object and they would say, you know what that is? Yes. Okay. What I want to teach you is like that. They would never forget the illustration. It's putting handles on the truth so you can carry it anywhere you go. The book of Revelation is the same way. It's a simple book. You want to understand the book of Revelation? Just remember that the book of Revelation, I had to write this down, that 278 of Revelation's 404 verses point to the Old Testament. You want to understand the book? Know the Old Testament. John did. And it came to people here, remember, 10% of the people in this region were Jews. Hellenized, but Jews. Something else about those Hellenized Jews, by the way, just as a footnote, and this is just a footnote, that because they were Hellenized, it meant that they were forgetting how to read Hebrew. But they did know Greek. They had the Septuagint. Remember the Greek version of the Old Testament. They used that mostly, but they were forgetting Hebrew. John knew Hebrew. He spoke Aramaic. No doubt he spoke Greek. But he was a very, very Eastern thinking guy. The book of Revelation is easy to understand. But to understand it, you need to know not only John. How did he write? Remember, like Dick and Jane, like an elementary school primer, see spot, run, spot, run. We tend to look at even 1 John, oh, deep and, oh, it's mysterious and all that. No, read it like kindergartners are receiving it. Because it's written to people who couldn't even read. They could hear it read to them. It was something that is so simple, we overthink it because we're Hellenized. The message is so profound, it's so enormous. And it's said in terms that a child could understand. The book of Revelation is written the same way. It's written the exact same way. So here it comes to shore. Who are the people reading it? Jews who are Hellenized, who know pagan structure, who know pagan teachings. Watch out on the road there, you guys. Here comes a vehicle. But who know and understand these things. But also, of course, pagans who have come to Christ. And they know their own paganism. Now, I'm going to read you a passage just to kind of set this off that has to do with this thing behind us, that area. That area was the temple of Apollo. So the statue that's there of Pluto is not the right statue that they should have there. I don't know why they put that there. Well, I kind of do, but they should have put Apollo there if they really wanted to recreate it. But that platform was a temple. People wanted to know their future. The future was a scary thing in this world. So they would go to, for instance, in Greece, they would go to the oracle at Delphi, right, to tell their fortune. But they would also go to the temple of Apollo here. Now, I don't know if you noticed, of course, how could you miss it, but the cascades of calcium carbonate that is coming out of these hot springs, this giant crack in the earth downhill from Hierapolis that runs for about a mile. That's hot springs that are boiling with calcium carbonate, which gives it that snowy white crystalline effect. If you see the water, it can be brown sometimes and bright blue other times. It's just an amazing thing. And no wonder they put a big pagan area up here, because it's mysterious to them, because it's coming from out of the earth, from the realm of Pluto. But then there was something else about this. Just on the other side of the temple from where we're standing, the platform drops off and there's a wall there with a doorway in it. The doorway is sealed up now because they don't really want anybody to go in there, but they left a small window so you can put your ear up to it and you can hear bubbling. There's a hot spring down there. But if you smell it, it's sulfurous. It's not like calcium carbonate that really doesn't have an odor. This is sulfurous. So if they were to pipe this water out, it would definitely turn things around it very yellow or brown. This was a place where the virgins of the temple of Apollo would be approached by people who want their fortunes told. And then they would go into that little doorway where there would be a chamber. Once again, the chamber is not there anymore. And they would breathe deeply these sulfur dioxide fumes, which are poisonous. And of course, it would cause them to hallucinate, and it would basically wreck their brains. They would probably die in a year or two, if they even lasted that long, from breathing this poisonous air. But they would come out hallucinating in an ecstatic state, and they would tell the people their fortune under the influence of calcium or sulfur dioxide, lacing through their brain, eventually killing them. But this was a place where people went to get their fortunes told, a very pagan place. And they had a name for it, and this is why that statue was there. They called it a plutonium. Plutoniums are all over the Greek and Roman world. In fact, there's actually more than one, but one big one in Israel that those of you who have been to Israel, you know this place. It's called Caesarea Philippi. Remember the big cave in the side of the rock, those of you that have been there. The Jordan River, the Banyas River, used to flow out of that cave. And that was a mysterious place to them. Of course, they felt that it flowed out of the underworld. Even the Jews were troubled by it because they also know that like with the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, there is a place in the earth, a place of punishment or paradise that Jesus described. And the Jews knew that as the place of death. Of course, the Greeks knew that as the place of death and the place of Pluto. So they called it a plutonium, and they were afraid of it. In Israel, it had another name. They called it the gates of hell. Some of you knew that. And of course, when Jesus is talking to his disciples, the gates of hell will not prevail. That's what he's referring to. But we're not going to Caesarea Philippi. We're in Hierapolis. This particular plutonium went down into an area that bubbled, smelled bad. It was the realm of Pluto. It was the realm of the underworld. It was a pagan realm. The Jews in this area would have had another word for it that also would have been familiar to the Greeks. They called it an abyss. Now start thinking like these people. They're terrified of this area. Even the Jews that are around here, they don't like the paganism of it at all. Not much. We'll get to that later. They actually kind of compare themselves to the pagans in a positive manner. We'll talk about that when we get to Philadelphia. But here, this was an entrance to the underworld. It was a scary place. It was a place where dangerous things came out of the ground. In that light, here comes the book of Revelation. The scroll is handed off to you. You live here. The ink is still wet. And you read, the fifth angel sounded his trumpet. And I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. And when he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened from the smoke from the abyss, and out of the smoke locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. And they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. And during those days men will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. And the locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. And on their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. And their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses, and the chariots rushing into battle. And they had tails and stings like scorpions, and in their tails they had the power to torment people for 5 months, and they had a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, in Greek, Apollyon. There you have it. And it was really bad, because the first woe is past. 2 others are yet to come. And that was a woe, W-O-E, not woe, like W-H-O-A. So, but this is how they would see it. It would cause them not randomly to say, oh, a thing hits the earth and the key opens up and all of this stuff comes out. They're going to think in terms of this. Once again, with the revelation of John, which is actually the revelation of Jesus, the Lord is using what the people knew to help them understand what was to come. The key to the shaft of the abyss. This place is sealed up. But to these people, what if someone, something, some being comes along and just blows it open? What's going to come out of there? Oh, that's really scary. Woe to us, you see. He's painting a picture for them. And it's a very, very simple picture for them to get. Now, if you go back and teach this without knowing this, well, we kind of miss the point. We suddenly realize the terror that would go through a person's mind knowing that you have opened up the underworld. For a Jewish person, for a Christian who reads this, they would know this is not a good thing, especially in light of like the Apostle Peter talking about the lower dungeons of a place that the Greeks knew by the name of Tartarus. And that is the name that Peter uses when he writes for 2 Peter chapter 2 about where the most dangerous angels are being kept under lock and key. Open that up and what happens? And they would picture it by picturing this. This is why this is in the book of Revelation, because it's not something, once again, that's just put there to say this happens. It's something there to provoke a picture in their minds. And that's the picture that they would get perhaps in a place like Hierapolis or Caesarea Philippi or just south of Athens, all kinds of places like that. And I just thought you'd like to know that's how simple God makes the book of Revelation. But we'll see more as we go to the 7 churches. So there you go. Amen.
Thank you.